Welcome to Withum's 2021-2022 Global Summit. This year, we have a podcast series with Withum's international team members discussing doing business in regions around the world with our HLB member firms, our clients, and our colleagues. Listen in for discussions to hear how they transact business in multiple countries, to learn about changes in their home country environments, as well as about the culture, cuisine, and must-see sites in each region.
Hi, I would like to welcome everyone to our broadcast with the Withum Global Summit about doing business in India. On this podcast today, we're going to be discussing more about doing business in India, some of the items to keep in mind if you're currently thinking about expanding your business over to India, or vice versa if you have a Indian business and you're thinking about expanding over to the US market. But as far as some introductions, I have Raj Tripathi and myself, Calvin Young. I'm a manager in the international tax group here at Withum, where I work very closely with Raj, and we work primarily to assist clients with their global expansion and other cross-border transactions. I'll hand it over to Raj to provide a quick introduction on himself.
Thank you, Calvin. Good morning, everybody, and good evening, whoever is a listener in the other parts of the world. I'm part of the Withum family, been here for about 2+ years and doing a lot of cross-border U.S. international tax, outbound, inbound. That has been my niche. Been doing U.S. international tax for the last 23+ years, and my primary focus has been on U.S.-India corridor, helping a lot of U.S. companies who are trying to go into India, expand into India, and when Indian companies are coming to the U.S., how we can help and support them from tax, audit, advisory, and business expansion perspective. Thank you. And I'm going to hand over to our one of our other speakers, Ambassador Keshav, to introduce himself.
Thanks, Raj. My name is Atul Keshav. I'm the president of the United States India Business Council here in Washington, D.C. We're part of the United States Chamber of Commerce, and the U.S. IBC was created at the request of both the Indian and American governments in 1975 as a means by which we could grow trade and commercial and business ties between the world's two greatest democracies. So it's a real privilege for me to lead not only the U.S.-India Business Council, but all of its 250 members who are part of it. And I'm also a former and retired Foreign Service officer, most recently working on East Asia, Quad, and Indo-Pacific affairs in the State Department. Also served as the Charge d'Affaires at our mission in Delhi. I was a U.S. ambassador to Sri Lanka and Maldives, U.S. envoy to APEC, DAS for South Asia, and a bunch of other jobs. So it's great to be on the program. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Atul. And we also have another special guest, John Campanella, the CFO of GuidePoint, who I'll turn it over to provide a quick introduction on himself.
Thank you, Calvin. Good morning, my colleagues, Atul, Raj. Thank you for inviting me today. My background, I've been with GuidePoint Global, company in the information space for about 10 years. I'm the CFO of the company. My background more specifically really relates to growing companies, in particular global companies, and expanding operations around the world. GuidePoint itself has been around since 2003, and today is really a truly global company. Its business is in the information space, and more specifically caters to companies in the institutional money management, private equity, consulting, and corporations around the world. We basically help them become smarter in terms of what they're trying to do. And it's a little different based on the client type, but we help them find experts to answer their questions. We do that everywhere at this point. The company has other lines of business. We provide surveys. We sell alternative data, and we put on teleconferences, really within the umbrella of making our clients smarter. So we've been at that for a while now and been expanding.
Thank you, John. So I think we can get right into the meat of the podcast and discussion today. So I'll kick it off with the first discussion point that we have, whether now is a good time to invest into India. And I'll direct that first question to you, Atul.
Calvin, thanks very much. Look, let me go back into history a bit. My father and millions like him left India in the 1950s in an era of economic stagnation and poverty because they were seeking a better life. And he found that better life outside of India. Now, why do I tell that story? It's because nowadays, and I was just in India last week, nowadays the sense of possibility, the optimism, the dynamism of India is just remarkable. I think it really fulfills a dream that my father had and that I and many other Indian Americans have of an India that is powerful, prosperous, democratic, inclusive, pluralistic, peaceful, and upholding international order. The Indian government and the Indian people have this very bright ambition of India as a 5 and then 10 and maybe even $20 trillion economy. And the IMF has said that India is projected to grow by 9% this year, although I later heard that because of the war in Ukraine, that might get shaved a bit as a part of the global consequences of what's happening. But that said, there's boundless optimism in India about what the country is going to become. And what I feel really positive and optimistic about is that not only is it a country of 1.4 billion people, a very stable polity in very unstable times, a democracy, a country very friendly to the United States, but it's also a country where the government is systematically taking steps to remove roadblocks and inefficiencies. You're seeing it in the massive infrastructure construction, metros, highways, ports, airports. It's just amazing to see how much work is being done to get India moving. The GST, creating a national market for the first time in hundreds of years, is an enormous step forward in helping India integrate and really unleash its full potential. They're taking care of people at the very lowest levels of society to help them rise up the socioeconomic ladder in ways that have never been done before, in terms of things like cooking gas and toilets and drinking water and banking and bank accounts, and of course the cell phone and digital information revolution. So I think it's a great time to invest in India. I know there's a lot of companies that are expressing interest, especially in sort of turbulent geopolitical times. India can be a safe harbor given all of the very positive things that are happening there.
Thank you, Atul. So it sounds like India, the country itself, has a very dynamic, optimistic, and talented workforce, as well as the government investing in the infrastructure within the country, so that it's modernizing its infrastructure, so that it is a good place to do business for that current investment of businesses looking to expand over there. I'll open up to the group to see if anyone else has any thoughts on whether it's a good time to invest in India right now.
Sure. Maybe, John, if I hand it over to you, I'll add some color to what Atul was referring to. And I'm sure Atul kind of covered most of it, but I would like to add some more color. That as India being the world's 5th largest economy with an abundant labor force, as Atul alluded, and that's basically the abundant labor force is offering the best alternative in terms of the depth and size of the market, with the population of 1.4 billion. And the median working age is around 900 million. This shows that India is a young and aspirational economy for foreign companies to think about why India is a destination for investment. In addition to that, there was a recent report by the Center for the Strategic and International Studies. India's FDI inflows has seen a quick jump. It had already crossed almost 40 billion mark in 2016, with a spike of 31% to over 62 billion in 2020. What we have also seen during the pandemic, a lot of companies or countries were debating to battle the pandemic. But in India, we have seen that the FDI has hit a record of 72.4 billion just in 2021. So this is the kind of investment that we have seen, and the countries are looking at for future investments and growth in India. Also, this shows that India is becoming a destination for investment with almost more than 60,000 startups today, out of which 80 are unicorns and more than 40 unicorns that have just emerged in 2021 itself. So today, I would say that India is an encouraging country with the ease of doing business and reducing the government interference. the focal point is that the objective of the current political era of of Indian government is that they want to reduce the government interference and make India as a destination and do more of ease of doing business. And they're also trying to simplify and lower corporate tax rates, as everyone is aware of that they have some incentives, benefits that they're providing. And it is also making every effort to attract foreign companies to look at India as a destination for investment. Also, India is committed to deep economic reforms by making improvements in the retrospective taxation, which we have seen with the Vodafone case that the Indian government has come out with a retrospective improvement, and it has also introduced big reforms in the IT sector and the BPO-related outdated telecom regulations. These are some of the reasons why I think India is a destination and people should think of why they should go to India and start investing and expanding into India. John, if you would like to add something.
Well, Raj, I think between you and Atul, you guys covered the bases on the specifics around it. The one thing I would add is when I look around the globe, for the reasons you both indicated, I personally believe that India is at an inflection point here. So when I look out into the future of the next 10 years, I'd be hard pressed to find a country that is better well placed to provide exciting growth opportunities for foreign companies entering into that market and growing. So to me, it's really at the top of the list for all the reasons that you've mentioned. So that's pretty much how I view the scenario.
Thank you, John. So my next question would be directed to you as well. Why did GuidePoint decide to expand their operations into India?
Thank you, Calvin. Really, for the reasons we were just discussing and heard from my colleagues, but more specifically within GuidePoint, we've been expanding now since I've been with the company 10 years, our global footprint, driven by really client demand. And really, we reached a point where we were seeing from our existing clients, which is fairly sizable at this point, that there's a lot of interest in India for the reasons we've been talking about. And so companies are saying, we need information on India, connect us. And then on the flip side, we were getting strong indications from companies on the ground in India that there was a need for our type of services. We were hearing that from our connection points as well. So the combination of the two really conspired to really heighten the need for us to invest in India, and it got to the point where it was a siren call. Okay, we've got to do this. We've got to do this now. So that's really what contributed to that. And more specifically, when we think about for GuidePoint, it's really the breadth and scope of and the development of the labor force, the English language skills that are available, and compounding that is for us the historical foreign investment that's really laid the groundwork for companies like us to invest in. So that's kind of our view.
Thank you, John. That's an interesting story as of GuidePoint's path to entering the Indian market. So you mentioned the business needs as to why it made sense for GuidePoint to expand into that Indian market. But Raj, would you be able to provide some insight onto why invest in India over other countries in that region, the Southeast Asian region at the moment?
Absolutely, Calvin, and thank you. And I think, as I had alluded earlier, and I'm going to repeat myself again, that being the fifth largest economy with the abundant labor force, and the best alternative in terms of the size in the market, as you know, that the median age in India right now for working class is about 20, the age group of 27 people, 27 and onwards, is close to about 900 million. So that's the kind of workforce that India has, out of that 1.4 billion. So because of that abundance of workforce, that's one of the key things I tell my clients that, hey, you should consider India as a destination for investment. Also, the business climate, as you know, the business climate in India is currently the best it has ever been. So India has a stable government since 2014, which has which basically has, focused on improving the ease of doing business in India with the current government, which has been in power for, since 2014. And the objective of the current government is that how can we not only attract foreign investment into India by ease of doing business in India, smart cities incentives, Atmanirbhar Bharat incentives, Make in India incentives. So this is the objective the current government has, which has also propelled India to the 63rd place amongst 119 countries in the World Bank of Ease of Doing Business ranking as of 2020. In contrast to what India was back in 2014, it was 142nd place. So this shows that with the current government, the steady government that we have right now, it has dropped from 142nd, where it stood, to 63rd place right now of the ease of doing business in India. And India has also improved its ranking in 7 out of the 10 indicators and has moved closer to the international best practices. And recently, the government has also introduced a bill to abolish retrospective taxation, which I mentioned earlier, which basically presents a clear and predictable taxation law to provide impetus to India's aim of becoming a US $5 trillion economy. As Atul had mentioned earlier, that India is looking at a $5 trillion economy. So also there is a strong economic growth. The country has a strong growth rate, particularly in the information technology and business process outsourcing sectors, which has attracted companies like GuidePoint to look at India as a destination for investment. Also, this is some of the largest sectors of the global economy as a whole. Your back office, your technology, and the service sectors are some of the key sectors that the government of India is trying to attract more and looking at companies to come and invest. In addition to manufacturing sector is the other sector that the government is trying to focus on. Also, the government of India is providing benefits and incentives to attract foreign investments in the financial sector, technology, and manufacturing. Because of that, the government of India has focused on coming out with the GIFT City, which is an emerging global financial and IT services hub, providing tax rebates, tax holidays, and providing indirect tax benefits to people who go and set up their operation in the GIFT City. And the aim is to attract for FDI and improve the economy by exporting products and services and finding for other markets to attract them to come and invest into India. In addition to that, the government of India has also, they had a special economic zone in a lot of states in India, which kind of grandfathered back in March of 2020, but now the government of India in this year's budget did come out with a clarity that they will look at, reviving the special economic zone and give some more clarity on what the special economic zone will look like on a go-forward basis and how they can try to attract more foreign investments into India, Also, one other aspect I would like to bring to, that I would like to highlight that on 17th of February, the Gujarat Chief Minister, Mr. Bhupender Patel, unveiled the Gujarat Biotechnology Policy 2022-2027, with an expected capital investment of over rupees 20,000 crore, providing assistance to more than 500 industries in the state and creating over 1.20 lakh new employment opportunities. As the policies aim to achieve the Atmanirbhar Bharat, that the vision that Prime Minister Modi has been, trying to implement. In addition to that, the manufacturing sector, they're attracting more manufacturing sector in India. They're providing a 15% tax, benefit, which got extended till 2023. So that's another way of attracting more foreign companies to consider moving their manufacturing hub into India and availing the 15%, manufacturing benefit. So these are some of the incentives, benefits that I would say is trying to, focal point of the government of India to attract more companies to come to India.
Calvin, could I just jump in and add one more point and one more thought?
Yeah, definitely.
So the other thing is that in addition to being a vast market and a country with really solid demographics and economic growth projections, India also is just brimming with human talent. And Raj mentioned this, but one of the reasons why global companies are not only selling in India and investing in India, they're also designing in India, they're innovating in India, they're exporting from India because of that just incredible amount of human skill and talent that increasingly is staying in India because of opportunities that they see and the optimism that they have This is not the 50s and 60s and 70s when Indians were leaving. This is a time, in fact, when Indian kids come to America, get a really excellent advanced degree, and then go back to India because they see that opportunity. And I think a lot of global businesses have understood that, especially businesses that are into design, innovation, technology, research. They readily get the advantages of doing business in India.
Thank you, Atul. That's a great point, that the workforce there is educated and talented and also motivated to provide these services for any and work for any company, U.S. company that's looking to work there, just because the human factor is always a big focal point when businesses expand into new markets. I also had a follow-up question for Raj. You mentioned before that there were many benefits offered by the Indian government, as well as the growth of the economy, and Atul mentioned the optimism of the population there. But in the near term and also the long term, do you see any sectors besides the services sector, the tech and manufacturing sectors, that offer the most opportunity for growth, or do you think those are the key sectors for growth in the next 3 years, and then longer term, the next 10 years?
Yeah, so thanks, Calvin. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll go back to, manufacturing. Yes, the government of India is trying to attract more manufacturing companies to come to India with the 15% corporate income tax rate that companies can avail. Also in the service sector, they are looking at, even in the financial services sector, the government of India has a GIFT City, which is a special economic zone in the state of Gujarat, and they're attracting more companies to come and set up their back office and avail the tax holiday for 10 years on the corporate tax side, and also indirect tax does not get levied. Plus, they're also what the government of India came out, is that they also wanted to have the aerospace, industry to focus and set up their operations out of the GIFT City in the special economic zone, and giving a lot of benefits to the aerospace, leasing of the airspace of the airplanes. That was initiated last year by the government of India, and this year they have invited the shipping companies to consider setting up their hub out of the GIFT City in Gujarat, so that they can avail all the benefits from the tax side, indirect tax side, and other benefits that the state of Gujarat is providing. And similarly, the government of India is focused on expanding the special economic zones from the other states that already had the special economic zone centers bifurcated. So the government of India is going to revive that as well to attract more, companies to consider coming back into India or expanding into those cities and states as well. And also the government of India is focused on the smart city to the second tier. But in addition to that, some of the key sectors the Indian government is focused on promoting. Manufacturing, I've already mentioned, and attract foreign investment and shift the supply chain. But also some of the other industries that they are really focused on is electrical, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, electronics, heavy engineering, solar equipment, food processing, chemicals, and textiles are some of the few that I can highlight. The areas that the government of India is promoting to attract foreign manufacturing companies to come and consider. In addition to that, the government of India is also providing the product, it's called the Production Linked Incentive PLI scheme. What that means is India has approved a proposal to provide a PLI incentive for about 2 trillion rupees, which is close to about $27 billion over 5 years, to create jobs and boost manufacturing in the country in the sectors that I just alluded earlier. And those are the 14 sectors, including IT, hardware, and manufacturing, and cell phones, mobile phones. The PLI is an innovative scheme, and it provides an incentive in terms of cash to various companies for enhancing the domestic manufacturing, apart from focusing on reducing import bills and improving the cost of competitiveness of local goods. So the PLI scheme is offering all these incentives or incremental sales for production manufactured in India. And those incentives could vary between 4 to 6% of turnover for most categories, and go up to 10% of, for some products. So this is the kind of incentives, benefits the government is providing in those 14 sectors. It's not only financial services or a service sector or the BPO sector, but these are the other 14 sectors the government is trying to provide as a PLI incentive to, attract more companies to consider India as a destination for investment.
Thanks, Raj. So I'll ask John, what is your long-term vision and plan for GuidePoint in the Indian market?
Calvin, as a global company, we've developed a playbook for building our businesses with various countries, and that's obviously been refined over the years. You know, for our business, it begins with an unwavering understanding of the importance of customer service and delivery. And for some of the things that were shared by Atul and Raj, India is really well placed, and this is from personal experience. Just the level of hospitality and openness that I experience, and it's pretty evident. And when you first go there and you meet a lot of people, that really lends itself to our particular business in terms of customer service and the execution and delivery. So that aligns very well. You know, and part of our process is really understanding and developing a keen awareness of the sensitivity toward the differences in norms and cultures of that marketplace as part of our process around due diligence going into that marketplace. So it's a good fit, is really my point here for GuidePoint with India. And this obviously filters through our customer service, business development, human resources, finance, and legal operations. So we're very well connected that way. And that really makes a difference long term in terms of operations. We've seen this play out in other countries, and I have a lot of confidence that we'll see a similar, if not better, outcome in India, looking out over the horizon. We anticipate that because of these things, that India will contribute above average growth, and I expect it to become a pillar our global operations. And I'm going to take it even to another level. And basically, the same way the U.S. is a pillar to our operations, I think India over time will become a pillar to GuidePoint's operations. Really contributing the skill sets beyond when I mentioned customer service, really client operations, really more, you know, Raj mentioned technology, the skill sets there. We think it's going to be broad-based and look very much like it does on the U.S. side over time. So that's very exciting.
Calvin, can I jump in and give maybe a slightly different take on the sectoral question? I think the sectoral answer is, and Raj covered it, yes to all. You know, what's happening is that after, you know, a quarter century, maybe even more, hundreds of years of foreign interference, colonialism, socialism, something rather significant is happening in India. The country is unpacking itself and becoming what it always used to be, which is one of the largest economic entities on the planet. The history has shown that India historically had the highest GDP on the planet for millennia. And so as you look at the complexity of the country, you realize that that unpacking is happening faster and faster. When I was a kid, there were the 4 metros, you know, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras. Now their names have changed, but those 4 remain, of course, the 4 big cities. But, you know, Bangalore has boomed, Hyderabad has boomed. There are cities that people in America had never heard of, like Gurgaon, that are now really critical to business in the United States, Pune, and so many other places. You know, there are places that Americans have never heard of that, I'll give you an example. Raipur, the capital of Chhattisgarh, has a Marriott and a Hyatt. And you think about the incredible layered complexity of India, how many cities and towns and villages are moving up the value ladder. I, as a kid, used to go to a little town called Panipat, and you know, it was just 60 miles north of Delhi, but might as well have been 1,000 years away from where I was growing up in Africa or in Europe or in America. And you know, you go to Panipat today and you realize it's a boom town, and there's so much activity and investment. So again, I see this unpacking happening for decades because India is overcoming hundreds of years of difficult history, and the government is facilitating that kind of blossoming, that blooming of the country in places we've never heard of, but will very soon, because they'll be critical to global supply chains, global innovation, global design. And this is where, just to add another thought, I think it's really important for India to focus on ease of doing business, level playing field, clear and transparent and predictable regulatory and tax policies, and business-friendly kind of attitudes. And you're seeing that more and more in the States, where chief ministers and their staff are very aggressive about attracting business and investment, high-quality jobs. They know that American companies bring the best standards of ethics, environmental stewardship, managerial skill, technology, etc., and they're hungry to have them.
Calvin, can I add something else to this, point that Atul just mentioned, and the second tier cities, so I have seen, and in last, I would say 10 years, I've taken more than 70 companies to set up their offices in India, whether it was manufacturing, back office, or service industry, or, BPO sectors. I've seen, that few years back, companies would say, hey, I want to go to the big cities, and as Atul said, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Mumbai, Pune, because they're technology hubs, But now what I've seen in the last couple of years, I was specifically during COVID, and that now companies are considering, hey, why should I go to the bigger cities? Let me go to a smaller city. For example, I have a client that is going to a city of Bhopal to set up a back office. Nobody has heard about Bhopal in the state of Madhya Pradesh. Bhopal was only known for the gas tragedy that happened, 30 years ago. But now Bhopal is coming out as a hub for investment. Companies are looking at setting up their back offices in Bhopal. So as Atul alluded, yes, there are thriving cities, small towns in India that are and that will grow. It's just a matter of the government coming out with and they're coming out with clear policies of making the second and the third tier cities as smart cities, and that'll be the vision that we should think about for attracting more companies to look at India, not the bigger cities, but the second or the third tier cities, which are going to be smart cities, and work with the government of India's vision.
Thank you. Those are good points. As far as I want to go back a little bit, Atul mentioned that a lot of the local governments, they're working on the ease of doing business in India. So that brings me to another question. I'll open this question up to the group. Maybe John can cover some of the major hurdles that he's seen in bringing GuidePoint to India, and also to Atul and Raj, what do you see as the current hurdles to doing business in India?
Sure, Calvin, thank you. Our experience, obviously, we're in early days here, but I would say that for us in our experience, it's probably taken longer than we expected. It hasn't diminished our optimism for the opportunity, but I would caution companies thinking about pursuing India to do their due diligence, execute on planning, scenario analysis, to really understand what it takes in the marketplace. We've seen some friction in setting up banking per se. Some of the process around setting up an organization is very thorough and detailed, and there's a fair amount of documentation. Again, that's not surprising, but the timelines, I would caution people to take a patient cadence to the process and understand that it's going to follow a certain thread and it's going to follow through that. But that being said, it really hasn't diminished our optimism for the opportunity. I would say that Raj and his team at Withum has been very, very helpful in this process, walking us through various steps, hand-holding us, and putting us in touch with the right partners at the right time. And that's another point I would make. It's really important as you're pursuing this marketplace and going into it that you're aligned with the right partners who can sort of expedite things for you. And we've benefited from that through the relationship with Raj and his team. So we're very excited about where this is going to head, and we're looking forward to that.
Maybe Atul, do you want to add something to this?
So I would just say that India is a land that is truly unique in my experience. And I was born and grew up in Africa. I lived in Europe and in Asia, and of course in America. And I've been all over the world. And India truly is unique and individualistic. So it is a land of boundless opportunity. But I think anyone who wants to come into India needs to understand that India takes all comers on its own terms, And so you have to understand the local scenery, the local dynamics, the local personalities. And in a country as layered and complex as India, and indeed it is my opinion that India is the most complex polity on the entire planet by far, then a decision that works for you in Gujarat may not work for you in Tamil Nadu. A series of calculations that you've made in Maharashtra may not work in Haryana. And so you've got to have an approach similar to how you approach the United States, where there's a central government, the federal government, then there's state governments, there's local governments, there's municipalities, there's think tanks and NGOs and media. And, it's a very, very complex, pluralistic democracy where people are, free to express their opinions. And I think the key is, if you want to be successful, and there are many American companies who have been really successful in India, they approach India on India's terms. And they figure out how they work with India versus trying to make India work with them. And they do their research, and they do the necessary in terms of meeting people and gathering information and understanding and partnering up well and doing all the due diligences that are really, really necessary. And of course, they do it ethically and beyond reproach, because we have the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which strictly punishes companies that engage in any kind of unethical behavior. So I think those that have done the work, the effort, and put in the time succeed very well in India. And they have shown the pathway of proven success, but they have also started from the basic assumption that India is different and unique and must be dealt with in a bespoke fashion.
And I'll just add, Karen, I'll just add some more color to that. And I totally agree with you, Atul and John, what you mentioned, and I think as Atul said that, being 29 states, and every state has its own language, their own culture, their own way of doing things, even though there's a federal government, the central government, but the state governments, but the people who are living in India are diverse. They have different ways of doing things. So whenever any company is going into India, they have to think about they're going into Europe, with 29 different countries, with their own language, their own food habits, their own cultural behavior, religious practices, everything is slightly different. So keeping that in mind is what you should be aware of and get ready to learn that. And once you learn that and you adopt it, India is always a welcoming country. They'll always welcome you with the open arms. They want to adopt you. They want to work with you. But on the way they have been working for the last 5,000 plus years, things are changing. It will change. But we have to just understand that when we go to India, we follow the way, the mentality of the Indian culture and adopt it, and then we'll be successful in India.
I would add, Raj, for us, it's really about understanding, and other companies going into the marketplace, understanding the timelines and
right.
Measuring those expectations and tempering those expectations. That it is a different environment. It is complex. It is more complex, I should say. So I think if the expectations are set appropriately, it just comes in a much more natural process.
Right.
Setting up operations and establishing and setting your footing there on the ground. So I would say that's part of the cadence that needs to happen for companies who are approaching this marketplace, which looks very, from the outside, looks very shiny. And there's a lot of optimism for it, and has a lot of potential, and that's exciting. But really, getting underneath the hood and understanding what is it going to take to get going. Being an American company, you want to get it done yesterday, right? 10 minutes ago is when it should have been done. But sort of understanding that the marketplace requires something a little bit different, and I think success will come with that kind of mindset.
Right. Agreed. So I'm going to switch over some of our questioning, and I'm going to go back to Calvin right now. And I'm going to ask Calvin as one of our international tax experts. So Calvin, what are the current challenges the U.S. company, is going to face when they go, from U.S. tax and regulatory landscape perspective, when they try to set up their operations in India?
Yeah, thanks, Raj. I think it's good to provide the whole picture. So we've been talking about the Indian side of things, but also from the U.S. tax perspective. I guess outside of tax, the first consideration for a U.S. company to make that decision to expand into India is whether the market's there for their business. Does it make business sense to expand into the Indian market? But then the next consideration would be, how does this impact the tax situation for this company? From the U.S. side, there's the Subpart F regime, and then now after tax reform, what they call the GILTI regime. Both of these regimes generally require earnings in the foreign. If the U.S. company sets up a foreign subsidiary, these tax regimes require those earnings in the foreign subsidiary to be included in the U.S. parent's income on a current basis. So there's no more deferral of foreign earnings. That is all that has to be picked up in the U.S. every year on an annual basis. And also, another thing that comes to mind is also the recent changes to the foreign tax credit rules, which may impact some U.S. companies that are going over to do business in India. The recently released regulations, they do modify that definition of what credible income taxes are, so that certain taxes that may have been credible in the past are no longer creditable going forward, such as things like the digital service tax in India. So having said brought up those items from the U.S. tax side, flipping back into the Indian mindset, how does the Indian government attract foreign direct investment into the region? I know it was brought up earlier that there are some incentives and then some initiatives to invest into the infrastructure, but I guess I'll ask Atul, what if you have thoughts on this?
So the issue, Calvin, I think, is that you just have to create kind of a permissive environment, right? And there's no secret to it. I think Vietnam and Mexico and China in its day and other countries have understood what it takes and what business needs and what investors need. And I think in the United States, like in business-friendly states, they clearly understand it. I hosted a dinner with the investment directors from the 50 United States last week here in Washington, and they understand what business needs, what investment needs, what capital wants, which is stability, predictability, ease of doing business, very stable kind of regulatory and policy structure, so that they can make long-term calculations that have a positive impact in the places where they invest. They want stable partnership, stable investment climate. This is not necessarily rocket science. It requires discipline, long-term discipline, and a clear understanding of the psychology of capital. In any democracy, we have to keep the voter first and the well-being of the voter. But part of that is making sure that factories and investments, businesses can implant and hire and produce over a long haul in a way that justifies the capital that's been invested. And the capital, frankly, nowadays is your and my pension funds and investment funds, and we as individuals want to make sure that the people who manage those funds are able to find places that they can have those kinds of conditions. So there is a global competition on, and Vietnam, Indonesia, Mexico, Ohio, California, Virginia, these are places that are very, very hungry about investment, and they understand the psychology of it. And when I talk to Indian audiences, I make that point, that I say, this is really India's moment to shine. It's a great opportunity for India, given the geostrategic kind of turbulence that's happening. And, just understand the psychology of investment committees and of investors and of capital in order to ensure mutual benefit and prosperity.
Thank you, Atul. So I'd like to turn the conversation a little bit. We've been talking business for the entire session today, but I want to just throw out the question out there. What are a couple of things about India that you'd like to highlight that maybe not on the business end, but whether it's more cultural or tourism, on the cultural side?
Look, my sense of India is, number one, that as an American, I feel very at home in India because it is a free country, and people feel free to express their opinions. And you will find a riotous diversity of opinions in India. People, are intellectually curious, and they have different perspectives, and they challenge you, and I love that. I've been to many places where that's not the case, but in India, it's almost intoxicating the way people are just totally free to express their opinions, which leads to another thought. India is the most diverse country on earth. You will find languages, cultures, traditions, flavor that you've never found anywhere else on earth. And that is also intoxicating. You get hooked on India because it just has so much excitement compared to so many other places on earth. And it is such a layered and complex society. It just seems like a great intellectual challenge to sort of try to understand a nation as vast as India. And then the third thing is India has all this amazing geographic and societal advantage in terms of demographics, positioning in world affairs. But the great thing about India, of the genius and civilization of India, is that they uphold order in the world. They uphold a rules-based international order. Indians have, in the millions, fought to defend freedom around this planet over the past 100 years in Europe and the Middle East and other places. They are a founding member of the United Nations. They have always believed in peaceful arbitration of disputes. They have submitted to binding arbitration in international panels because that's what a responsible great power does. And they have respected these tribunals because they uphold the international system of dealing with things. And so they're a constructive presence in world affairs. And when you look at Indian Americans in the United States, I had a certain story told to me about a president of the United States who said, in every rural community in my state, the hospital is the center of rural life, and it's very important. And in every hospital in my state, you will find Indian Americans. And I think that's a point of pride. You look at the motel owners all around the South and around the United States from India. They help build prosperous communities. Indian Americans and Indians really anywhere, I think, are viewed very positively because of that great civilizational tradition. And then for bonus points, I'll give you a fourth: the food, utterly fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you, Atul. That was a great, and I will just add a few more color to that. So as I mentioned, the country has, from political side, India has a long-standing parliamentary democracy and liberal economic policy, and it makes a safe place in many of the developing markets. The government has mandated and has a clear focus on job creation, infrastructure investment, also trying to tackle corruption. So these are something on the political front that the government of India is trying to do. And cultural, I think Atul has already covered, but I would like to say it's a diverse and complex country. And each person you meet will have a unique blend of the Indian and Western values, and people from different socioeconomic strata, educational backgrounds, class, and religion may behave very differently, even though they're all Indian origin, but they will behave very differently. And most Indians, and this, I'm just going to add what Atul said, most Indians enjoy good conversation on a variety of topics. Even in the business meetings, it is a common and normal to start discussion with small talk on other unrelated issues. In fact, this is a way for building a rapport and trust with the Indian businesses. And absolutely the food, Atul said, I'm saying, being from India, born and raised in India for last 24 years when I came to the US. And I've been in the US for last, I would say 25 plus years. But every day I miss my Indian food. And one of the favorite food that I love is from my hometown of city of Varanasi. That's where my roots go back. And there's a specific food that I love is the Bati Chokha, which is a very prevalent food and known in the state of Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh and Bihar. And absolutely the places I always recommend, my favorite place that I would tell everybody, people who are listening to this, is the city of Varanasi, where my roots go back, the holy city where the Ganges flows through, and the other one is the Taj Mahal, which was one of the iconic 7 wonders of the world. So I think this is some of the thought process I would leave. And then the two main festivals that I like to celebrate in India, my favorite is the Festival of Holi, which was just about a week ago, Festival of Colors. It's basically good over evil, and we play with colors. and we have good food that day. And the festival of lights, that is Diwali, which is one of my favorite festivals, similar to what you celebrate here in Christmas over here. People celebrate Diwali in India. It's a long 14-day festival, and I love that festival. For people to whoever is listening to this podcast should look into those two festivals and see how we celebrate. Over to you, Cal.
Thank you, Raj and Atul. Those are great points. It gives, I think, our audience, hopefully our audience has gotten a well-rounded picture as far as the political, the cultural, and also the business environment in India, as well as other considerations to think about when expanding over there. And just moving towards closing the podcast, is there a message that you'd like to leave for our listeners about doing business in India? I'll throw it over to John first, and then I'll go to Rajesh and then Atul following.
Thank you, Calvin. I would conclude by saying that I would caution companies to do their homework, due diligence. It's an exciting opportunity for all the reasons we've been discussing, but it does require a certain level of planning and cadence in terms of around expectations, how quickly you can ramp up. You need to do it right, and we're already seeing the rewards of that. So we're very excited. I think it's an environment that scales potentially very quickly, based on our experience. So that's probably the best advice I would give to other companies looking to enter that marketplace.
Thank you, John. And over to you, Raj.
I think I would just my closing remark will be that the Indian government, government's favorable policy regime and the robust business environment is what and also it has ensured that the foreign capital keeps flowing into the country. These are some of the positive initiatives the government of India has taken, in addition to the relaxation of the FDI norms across sectors such as defense, PSU, oil refineries, telecom, power exchanges, and also coming up with the GIFT City in Gujarat and special economic zone. These are the positive initiatives the government is providing and trying to attract. So I think companies should think about going into India, investing into India, and as John said, absolutely takes time to learn the culture, and there could be initial hurdles, hiccups, which the government of India is trying to overcome. It'll take time to overcome. And we will see that, but that's a positive approach. The government of India is focused on ease of doing business in India, and India is a destination for investment.
Thank you, Raj. And finally, Atul, do you have any closing remarks?
Well, first, thanks a lot, Calvin. This has been a great panel, and I really enjoyed the contributions by everybody. Let me say this. I think a lot of folks in India know that their future prosperity, their becoming a $5 and then $10 trillion economy, is going to rely very heavily on the trillions of dollars of investment that are flowing out of the United States and looking not only for investment partners in America, but around the world. That is American investor money. It is the savings of the American people. It's looking for safe harbors and productive harbors, and certainly India is going to play that role. And I think Indians know that. They also know that in terms of all the next-gen technology, semiconductors, 5G, 6G, artificial intelligence, quantum, that the United States and its companies are trusted partners and trusted friends, and that we have the best technology in the world. I also think that in terms of our energy infrastructure, both in renewables and in hydrocarbons, we have an unbeatable proposition in terms of safety, security, and that's true about our defense companies as well, and our pharmaceuticals and healthcare companies. Ours are the best in the world, and they work very well with India, in India, and I think they want to continue that strong track record and help build that India of our dreams. The challenge is that India, I think, also has to see how it can be receptive to the needs of all of these companies. John touched on it, and India does teach patience. I always told my junior officers when I was managing the political section in Delhi, these new officers would arrive, and I would say, look, India will teach you patience, and if you don't learn patience here, you're going to self-destruct. And so you have to understand that it's a different country. It plays by its own rules. It's a massive civilization with its own enormous gravitational weight, and you've got to kind of adjust to it. But in terms of receiving the capital of the world, India will also have to do some adjustment to adapt to the needs of capital and investment and savings. And I think that the Indian government's doing that. If you look at the various initiatives and the budgets that are being presented by the Modi administration, by the finance minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, you understand that they are in the business of attracting business, which is good. But there is more work needed to be done. India is not a perfect investment climate. There have been great improvements, but it is still a challenge. And so I would just counsel anybody that while the prospects are enormous, patience is a virtue, and being patient and doing your due diligence is critical. And I wish everyone great success. For me and for the United States India Business Council, bringing the people of America and India closer together is a personal passion. I think it's good for our countries. It's good for our 1.7 billion citizens who are all freedom-loving people. It's good for democracy, which is under threat around the world. So I'm very optimistic, and we'll keep at it.
Thank you, Atul. So I think we've covered a lot in this hour that we've been talking today, but I just wanted to close out by giving a special thank you to both John Campanella, the CFO of GuidePoint, and as well as Atul Keshup, the president of the U.S.-India Business Council, for joining us today to share their insight on doing business in India. And from our conversation today, it sounds like India is a great country for investment and expanding into. And as Atul has highlighted, India has a stable government. It's building up its infrastructure and has an ambitious and talented workforce, which provides for a good business environment for growth, even though there are some growing pains at the moment. Raj and I have been speaking and assisting numerous clients regarding structuring investment and business expansion into India, as well as with Indian businesses looking to expand into the U.S. market. So there's no question that the U.S. to India investments and vice versa are strong, and they should remain strong as businesses see the short-term as well as the long-term growth potential in both markets. If what we have discussed today has caught your interest and you'd like to discuss more about expanding your business in the Indian market or alternatively into the U.S. market, please don't hesitate to reach out, either myself or Raj here at Withum.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed your virtual trip to another region as much as I did. Please join us again as we continue to roam the world.